Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Founder's Story. I know you've heard of diversity, equity, and inclusion, but do you know how organizations can really implement this? How can you really benefit as an organization, as an employee? Well, today we have Joe Santana. He's the chairman of CDO Power Circle. He also is the host of ERG Power Talk. Now, this organization has supported top DEI leaders in corporations nearly $750 billion and a workforce of over 1 million people, making an incredible difference. So, Joe, welcome to the show.
My pleasure being here, Daniel. Thank you for having me.
So, Joe, let's dive in. How would you explain to people how diversity, equity, and inclusion can positively impact a corporation?
Well, there are a number of ways, but if we just narrow down to one of those, if you look at any U.S. Census statistic, if you look at statistics from around the world in terms of where the population is going, the world is becoming increasingly diverse. In fact, by 2045, the United States will have a majority former minority population. So what does that mean? That means that if organizations are going to be able to attract people and engage people in their workforce, it's going to have to be from that pool, from that new diverse pool of people. And likewise, in order to be able to prosper in terms of selling products and services to their market, you're going to have to be able to sell to that market as well, because the market is also becoming increasingly diverse. And even though I said it's going to happen by 2045, it's not going to happen suddenly from 2044 to 2045. It's actually happening gradually right now. So as organizations become more adept at being able to attract and engage employees from this increasingly diverse workforce and being able to address the needs of this increasingly diverse market, they position themselves for success today and tomorrow. And that's the reason why a lot of investors today look at social responsibility as one of the things that they use to assess an organization's ability to produce profitability now and to be a viable organization that's competitive as we move forward into the future.
So how are you seeing social good and corporate economic prosperity tying together?
They tie together because, take for example, look at it from the standpoint of an investor. What does an investor look for in an organization? They look for two things, basically. Is this company going to be able to yield the best dividends now? And is this company going to be a company that's going to grow in value over the next couple of years? And the fact of the matter is that if an organization cannot effectively attract a workforce from this increasingly diverse group of people that are becoming our new demographic, both locally and globally, and if they cannot sell products and services that appeal to this new demographic, doesn't bode well for them on either of those metrics of producing the best dividends today and being viable for tomorrow. So the more adept an organization becomes at being able to manage that new workforce and sell and work with that new market, the more prosperous it becomes. So the equation then becomes social good. In other words, making organizations better at being able to attract and engage people from various diversity dimensions, and prosperity on the other side, or economic productivity, are tied together.
It's really interesting. I was reading recently about a very, very large corporation based in the US that they were saying in about 2 years is not going to have enough workforce to maintain at the level that they're doing, or maybe what they're projected to do. So they were looking at a lot of robotic automation ways, which I thought was fascinating. How would you look at it in terms of, if you have an employee possible shortage, do you look at replacing people with robots? There's the rise in AI, or do you look at it that maybe you have a cultural issue, and if you fix that, you'll attract better workforce?
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting, Daniel. All these different factors like robotics and AI and the increasing diversity of the workforce, they're all tied together. And if I were looking at what is the solution, depending on the kind of company, what they do and what they're looking for. Like, for example, I know that with robotics, it's going to become possible eventually for people in remote areas to be able to work in a company that's several miles away. I recently shared a story that was really interesting. It happened out in Japan, where they had this cafe built where there were robot drones, and drone is the key word here. They were robot drones. There were the servers in this cafe. They were actually taking the orders from the patrons that were coming in, and then they were bringing the orders out. And these drone robots were being operated by people that were several kilometers away from this cafe, operating them with a virtual reality headset and joysticks and things like that. So if you can think about how you might be able to use that technology to, let's say, run a warehouse where you could have remote workers that are in another country, in another place, operating through the internet to do work that formerly required a person that was local to that particular business. You could see that the ability to get people into your workforce that are outside of what used to be considered the geography within which you were hunting for workers becomes increasingly possible. But that goes back again to the fact that as we start using more of these sort of drone-like robots, as we start using a lot of these other technologies that allow us to tap into people that are all around the world, we're also increasing the diversity of the workforce by doing that. And I look at technology today, things like AI and robotics and so forth, and I see these growing in importance, but I don't see them necessarily completely replacing people. I think that there are some things where people will always play a role. The question is, who will those people be? Locally, they're probably more diverse than they are today because of what we're looking at in terms of signals and trends. And they probably will also include people that are not local to our particular country. So it's an interesting challenge that has many layers to it because you have many moving parts. You have the robotics on one end, the ascension of AI tools, you have the increasing demographic changes. And I think that that's going to present some interesting challenges for businesses in the years to come.
It's interesting you bring that up. I was just speaking with a company last week who has robotics in Japan. These robots manage all of their convenience stores like 7-Elevens, but the people that are running the robotics are based in the Philippines, and they use, just like what you mentioned there, they use the remote, the controls, everything is based there. So this company now has to hire people from all around the world, which brings different complexities around creating culture. So I love that you bring that up. Let's dive into social responsibility and how individuals can impact the money that's being invested in a social responsible way.
I'm glad you asked that question because generally people who, let's say, are employees think that they have very little power, but they actually do have a lot more power than they may realize. So let's say, for example, the average employee that works in an organization probably is a member of some 401k plan. And that 401k plan that's managed by a plan investor usually involves different funds, different companies and so forth that are either in mutual funds or are set up as part of some type of offering for the pension or the retirement plan. What a lot of employees don't know is that in some cases, some of that money is going to things like private industrial prisons. In fact, it's going to private industrial prisons that incarcerate a lot of people who may be like them. So I'm sure that they don't want to invest in that, but they may not know what's underlying these various mutual funds that they're investing in. Well, the easy thing to do if you want to know what's underneath your IRA or your 401k is go to one of these nonprofit organizations like As You Sow is one. I know the CEO of the company. I interviewed him for one of my podcast programs. And those organizations like As You Sow, they look into these various mutual funds and they look at what are they investing in, who are the underlying companies, and what are those underlying companies funding? What is it that they're doing, whether it's industrial prisons or the use of child labor or different things like that. Once you're armed with that information, once you know what these funds are actually supporting, you can look at them and see which one aligns and which ones don't align with your particular values. Go back to your plan administrator and have your money moved so that you're not supporting things that are against your values, but you're supporting things that are aligned with your values. And if you find that there's nothing on the menu that actually aligns with your value, you have the right as an investor in this particular IRA or 401k to ask your plan administrator to look at other funds that are more aligned with your values. And in that way, you, even as an employee in an organization who's not directly investing in the stock market, can have some impact on how your money is being used to support things that are in alignment with your values.
Well, Joe, I love what you're doing here at Impact and Impact Plus. Our mission is to impact 100 million people. So it's been really great talking with you. If I want to listen to the podcast, the show, if I want to get in touch with you, how can I do that?
Yeah, the easiest way to get in touch with me is you can get me on LinkedIn, Joe Santana. It's really easy to find me there. You can also get me at my email, joe@joesantana.com. And my podcast is ERG Power Talk. I do 12 episodes a year, and they're packed with insights from thought leaders and from people who really are looking at empowering people in organizations who are running employee resource communities in order to help them, to help their organizations and their communities.
Wow, Joe. Joe Santana, really appreciate you being here. Very insightful, learned a lot. We need to have you back again because I want to dive into some more of this DEI and robotics in the future, and how can really organizations win with all of these things, and how can employees not feel like they're going to be replaced? It's scary out there. So I think your services are more needed now than ever, but we really appreciate you being here. So check out Joe Santana, and thank you again for being here on Founders Story.
Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate being here today.